Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredibly counterintuitive, yet honestly just utterly fascinating biomechanics behind traditional martial arts. Have you ever watched a traditional martial artist perform a sequence of movements and thought, it looks a little rigid or maybe even a bit awkward? Well, you are definitely not alone. And today, we're going to explore the hidden science behind those exact movements. Think about it for a second. Why on earth would experts, people who have dedicated their entire lives to physical mastery, purposefully choose stances that look and feel completely awkward and unnatural? Like, why would they intentionally restrict their own movement? In modern physical training, we're usually taught to move as freely and naturally as possible, right? But traditional karate kata takes the exact opposite approach. And to really get why, we have to look inside the human body. The answer actually boils down to a single number, 206. As you probably know, that's roughly the number of bones in the adult human body. But here's the hook. Even though you've got about 206 bones, your natural everyday movements are basically ignoring most of them. In our daily lives, and honestly, even in most athletic training, we leave a massive portion of our skeletal system completely, entirely asleep.
Section 1. Big versus small bones. The internal battle.
So, to understand how we wake those sleeping bones up, we've got to look at this stark biomechanical contrast happening inside your body right now. On one side, you have modern sports. Modern athletic science generally focuses on how to move our larger structures more efficiently and powerfully, basically to maximize speed and force. But on the other side, traditional karate operates on a totally different philosophy. Its goal is actually to quiet down the large bones. Why? Specifically, to give the smaller bones a chance to actually participate in the movement.
Let's meet the culprits. I like to call them the dominant giants. When we move freely and naturally, these large joints and bones, your shoulders, your hips, your shoulder blades, they instinctively take over. They are absolutely the loudest voices in the room. And the problem is, if you try to execute really delicate, highly coordinated movements while staying in a comfortable posture, these dominant giants fire first. They take over. And when they move too much, they literally act as a barrier, preventing the rest of your skeleton from fully integrating into the movement.
And that brings us to these structures getting blocked out, your hidden skeleton. We're talking about your fingers and toes, the radius and ulna in your forearms, the tibia and fibula in your lower legs, your ribs and your vertebrae. These are the tiny forgotten bones of the body. Because the dominant giants take on all the heavy lifting, these smaller structures just play a much smaller role in our day-to-day lives. Traditional kata intentionally seeks to awaken these specific smaller bones from their sleep, bringing them back online so they can work in harmony. Section 2. The genius of restriction. Boxing in big bones.
Now, here's the really wild part, the counterintuitive secret. Adopting difficult positions purposefully limits those large joints. By intentionally forcing the body into a shape that's actually hard to move from, the large joints are boxed in. They are restricted. And this restriction, it's the secret key. When the big, loud bones are suppressed, the smaller bones are forced to step up. They become active, and they start to cooperate with one another. Kata isn't trying to limit the body. It's using restriction as a tool to reveal movements and abilities that already exist inside you, but are usually just buried beneath the dominance of those larger structures.
And get this philosophy goes so much deeper than you might think. It's not just the physical stances, it's literally the clothing. Our sources point out that wearing a traditional belt, the obi, or sleeve ties, the tasuki, serves this exact same biomechanical purpose. Tying a belt tightly around the waist or tying back the sleeves intentionally restricts the free movement of your shoulders, your hips, and your waist, so even the traditional clothing tools are explicitly designed to box in the big bones so the small ones can finally wake up.
Moving on to Section 3, Mechanics of Stance, Sunshin and Naihanche.
Think about your own body for a second as we walk through this visceral chain reaction. Imagine standing with your feet angled inward. That's the Sunshin stance. When you go to take a step, what naturally happens? Well, most people will immediately change the direction of their foot the second they step, loosening the ankle just because it's more comfortable. But step 1 of kata is to maintain that awkward inward angle. Step 2, you absolutely do not let the ankle loosen or change direction. And what happens next is basically magic. Because you've restricted the ankle and the hip from taking the easy way out, step 3 automatically engages. The toes, the soles of your feet, the tibia, and the fibula all fire up and start working. You stop relying on just the hips and ankles, and suddenly the entire lower leg structure comes alive.
Section 4. Mechanics of a punch. the internal chain. Now let's travel up the body and contrast how this exact same restriction applies to a strike. In a typical modern sports punch, you're taught to move the shoulder blades largely inactively, right? Extending the arm outward to maximize your reach and power. But a traditional kata punch demands the exact opposite. You have to keep the shoulder blades, the hips, and those dominant big joints as absolutely still as possible. You are essentially restricting the very engines that usually drive a punch. And when you successfully quiet those shoulder blades and hips, you kick off this incredible internal chain. Under that strict restriction, the upper arm links to the radius and the ulna in the forearm, which links to the wrist all the way down to your fingertips. Our source text actually describes this as these parts precisely linking together. It is this incredibly delicate, sophisticated coordination of the arm's smaller structures. And the crazy thing? It only happens when the big joints are forced to sit out and stay quiet.
Section 5. The Unified Organism. Internal Rewiring. Let's zoom out for a second and take a macro view of the entire human machine. This really reveals the ultimate visual paradox of martial arts. When you watch someone perform these traditional movements, the external motion often appears small, stiff, or just kind of minimal. But you know now that this is basically an optical illusion. Because internally, right beneath the surface, by suppressing those big joints, a massive collaboration is happening. All 206 bones are firing, communicating, and coordinating as one entire whole, which completely redefines what this practice actually is. Kata isn't merely some collection of fighting techniques you just memorize. It's way more profound than that. It is a highly sophisticated method of transformation. It takes a body that usually functions as a clunky collection of separate, isolated parts and turns it into a single, perfectly integrated organism. It's a literal internal rewiring. Our source text captures this ultimate goal perfectly. The goal is to cultivate a body in which every bone and every joint resonates with the others and contributes to movement as one whole. It's not simply about moving better or punching harder in a conventional sense. No, it is about absolute internal harmony, achieved through the disciplined, deliberate use of physical restriction. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Take a look at your own hands, your feet, your posture right now. You've got 206 bones in your body. But because we live in a world that completely prioritizes easy, comfortable, natural movement driven by our dominant big joints, how many of your 206 bones are fast asleep right now? It really makes you look at your own biomechanics and the ancient wisdom of martial arts in a completely different light. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the hidden skeleton. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep learning.